Pretty excited about this next project that I'm going to be doing on the FRS, and it's something that we've actually had for 8 months now, but just haven't done it because we had a bunch of shows to go to, just didn't have enough time last car season to be able to do this. But it's wintertime now, and I think it's time that we install wheel ring lights. Now, we've done a lot of lighting upgrades on this car. We have the Morimoto XV LED headlights and the XV LED fog lights, both of which are retrofitted by Intimidation Lighting. And we also have the Color Flow Underglow, as well as Valenti tail lights that are also retrofitted. Custom coloring, they're blue on the inside, clear lens. All these are basically Flow Series lights, so they do all the colors all at once, bunch of different settings. It's pretty awesome. But the one thing we've been missing are wheel lights to kind of connect it all together. We have lights on the interior, we have the Starlight headliner now, we have the mount for the airlift controller is RGB, like everything. Lighting is cool. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you think we're stuck in the 90s or the early 2000s and cars are riced out and we're all about Fast and Furious and everything. And yeah, we are. And that's why we're doing this, because it's awesome. And as many people hate on it online, you go to a show or you show up to a meet and your car is lit up like a Christmas tree. Everybody loves it. Got some shirt vinyl in here, but this is basically what a wheel ring kit looks like. You have some aluminum L brackets, the LED lights, all the wiring for them, the extensions, and these are each pretty long. And then you have these pre-cut, pre-bent aluminum rings that aren't exact size that you need for the car, but those we'll kind of get mocked up on the vehicle, figure out where we're going to mount them, bend them out a little bit to be the right diameter. We want them to be as least visible as far as seeing where the light is coming from. We want to see as much light as possible, but we don't want to see the LEDs individually, which you can't get absolutely perfect because, especially on a wheel like this where it's really open, you're going to see the ring and everything else like that, but it doesn't look that bad. But we also want to get it pretty much as close to the rim as possible without touching. And we also don't want it to be really close to the brakes because there's a lot of heat that comes from those. And further the better. But basically, don't just take the wheel off, throw everything in, and then go to put the wheel on and realize that you made the ring too big and put all this work into it, because it's a lot of work. So here's what you'll need to do this, at least at the minimum. So a rivet tool, a rivet gun, some rivets. Make sure to get ones that have a longer end because they have to go through this aluminum pretty much twice. So you want to make sure that it's not just fitting through, because then it's more likely to fail. If they're longer like this, then you'll get a nice bulge on the end of them when you go to tighten them in, and then you won't have to worry about things breaking or coming loose or anything else like that. You're going to need some zip ties. It's always good to have zip ties. If you don't have any, bulk up. Just some snips just to cut those. Wheel ring light kit, which will come for all 4 wheels. Come with pretty much everything that you need, but it's nothing is assembled. So you're basically fabricating everything that you need in order to get it to fit your car. And then depending on the wheel ring light kit that you get, it should come with a controller as well. The controller that I have is the Colorworks Color Flow controller. And then there's just a kind of a generic app that you use to run everything. But this is pretty much what you need. You also need something to cut these down to size. Whether you're just scoring it and bending it back and forth to snap a piece off, which I don't recommend, or you use a cutoff wheel. A Dremel with a cutoff wheel works. Any way that you can to cut these down to size, cut these brackets down to size. And then the last thing that you're going to need is a drill with a drill bit for the proper size of the rivets that you're going to be using. And that's it. So I will go ahead. I'm going to start mocking this up and we'll get to installing these. Sometimes when you go in to install these, you're going to run into a little issue with how you're going to mount it. So usually the way you mount these is to the dust shield. If you don't have one, then you're going to have to try to figure some way of how you're going to actually mount it. Just because we have the dust shield doesn't mean we're not going to run into issues. Like with this one, it goes just over the rotor itself. And there's no room to get a rivet inside there. So in order to work around this, we're going to have to take the rotor off, which is easy. It's just 2 bolts, pull the caliper off, pull the rotor off, and then you'll have more than enough space to work with inside of there. And you can still put the wheel back on, at least onto the hub itself, just to check fitment around the diameter and everything. A little more work, but in the long run, it makes it a little bit easier because you have tons of space then to work with to be riveting everything together, making sure that your wheel ring lights are symmetrical as far as the diameter. You don't want it being kind of offset over here, offset over here. But the only problem with this is you don't have the caliper here to judge how far out it needs to be. So basically, you can take the rotor off, remount the caliper, and then do your wheel ring light. That way you know what diameter it needs to be. And then before you make anything permanent, just test fit it with a wheel and make sure that it's actually going to fit. So this is basically what you're going to be working with. Now on some vehicles, the dust shields just extend straight up and give you plenty of space to be able to drill a hole, toss a rivet in, and call her good. But these ones and some other vehicles may not give you that option, so this is the next best thing. So now this isn't solidly mounted. I have them threaded in a little ways just to get it in the general placement that it needs to be. But now I have more than enough room to work with to be able to figure out where I'm going to mount everything and drill it in. Doing this though, another thing you have to be conscious of is when the rotor goes back on here, it is really close to this dust shield. So you don't want to put those L brackets on this side and rivet it in, because then it's going to be grinding on your brake rotor. You want to put those on this side and make sure you get the rivets nice and tight so that they're as close to flush as possible. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to start with one of the wheel ring brackets and a couple of the L brackets and figure out how I'm going to mount it exactly to this. You're going to want at least 3 points of contact with the dust shield just to keep it secure. 4 would be the best, but you're also not working with a full diameter. So depending on spacing and where you can drill into, like this one already, it has a bunch of like spaces and everything, which are going to keep me from being able to drill into these flat sections. But work with what you got, kind of use common sense with this, and you'll be just fine. All right, bracket is on. Everything is super solid. That's not going anywhere. One thing that I didn't really think of was getting the brake caliper back off to get the rotor on with this in the way. Or if you ever need to change your brake pads or change your rotor or anything, this is going to get in the way now. Something that I didn't really think of. But what I am going to do here is I'm going to take the caliper off, pull it through this way, put the rotor into the caliper first, and then put it on the car, and then line up the bolts, tighten it up and everything. So it's just a couple extra steps, a little bit more tedious to do like brakes or anything with these on. If you have this mounted further back, you'd be able to get away with this, but you'd have to bend your own L brackets to get it to sit further back. But not that big of a deal, just something that I did not think of when I went to do it this way. And I didn't even think of it on my car. I haven't done the brakes since I did the wheel lights, but now I know that I'm gonna have a little obstacle to get around when I go to do that. Just something to keep in mind. But yeah, this went on just fine. This is on and it's solid. Now the only thing left to do for this one is to run the lights. When you run the lights, start with the end that has the wire coming out of it and mount that. Usually you want to just mount it right up to the top, close to like a brake line or speed sensor or anything else that's running along this, and then you can just kind of run it with that line and zip tie it to it just to keep it out of the way. And then when you route it, you also want to make sure that there's enough slack in it to compensate for suspension travel when you're hitting a bump and everything. You don't want it completely tight and then you hit a bump, stresses the cable. So just make sure to leave a little bit of slack just to make up for anything like that. Okay, so I just got done. I wiped this down with alcohol just to make sure that it's absolutely clean. Hands are dirty and everything. You want this to stick as good as possible because you don't want it coming off. These kits aren't exactly the cheapest thing, but you don't want to go through this again. The other thing that you want to keep in mind is when you run the lights here, the end that the cable is coming through, that's where the lights are going to start. If you get a kit that cycles the colors, doesn't just go solid, this kit, it cycles around in a circle. So you don't want to put the front on this way, the rear on another way, and then have them all mixed up. You want them all either going the same direction or going opposite from each other, depending on how you want to do it. You don't want them all randomly going in different directions. So what I would do is just on like this side of the car, if I mount it this way with the lights going like from the front of the car back and around clockwise, then I want the other side of the car to go counterclockwise. That way everything's kind of running in the same motion. If you have them, what I'm actually going to do with this one is I'm going to have the lights going counterclockwise on the driver's side. That way when you're parked and you have the lights on and they're cycling through, they're flowing the colors and everything, it'll give it the effect that like the car is moving. So these are going to go on like this. And I'm going to match the rear wheel up with this one. And then on the other side, I'm going to match it up with the wire basically facing towards the back of the car, just so everything matches up both sides. It should look like this when you're done. You have your cable, which will run with the lines that are already here. You have the LED strip stuck down, and go a little bit at a time. Don't just go ham, pull the whole backing tape off and then stick it on there. Just little bit at a time. Work your way, you're not in a rush. So, and then just make sure that it sticks down really good. Now, one thing you can do is if you have a heat gun or a hair dryer or something like that, if it's a little bit colder out, if it's in the middle of summer and you're doing this, you'll be just fine. But if it's a little chilly out, warm up the adhesive on the back of this and it'll stick into here much better. You don't have to like melt it by any means, just warm it up a little bit just so it gets soft and tacky. What I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna hook this one up and test it out, make sure everything's working, make sure it looks all right. I'm gonna throw a wheel on it and just get a general idea of how it looks and show you guys what you can kind of expect once you have this all done. And then after that, I'll knock out the other corners of the vehicle, get everything set up, and then show you the final result. 3, 2, 1. Now you can see there's a nice gap in between this and the wheel. It goes around the caliper and there's not going to be any issues. And this is why you just measure twice, cut once. And like I said, it's just a super basic app on this one anyways. And you can scan through the modes. And this is what I was talking about with the rotation. You want everything kind of going the same direction and then mirrored on the other side. And you can really get yourself into some trouble with these. I'll go ahead, I will turn off a light. Colors match the car. See, now this one's kind of crazy. It's just one of the modes where it actually goes reverse of what the typical flow is, so. Oh, that one's sick. Alright guys, it's all done. Ran all the wires, everything is tucked away, everything's zip tied up, and now it's just waiting on getting the wheels back on. So, ready for this? And you already seen that one. Such a cool mod. Other than crazy retrofits with headlights and taillights and fog lights and everything else, this is definitely, I would much rather have these than just Underglow. But when you have it all, it just pulls everything together. Here she is with everything on, all the lights on the exterior anyways. Got the headlights, fog lights, wheel lights, underglow, and even the tail lights. See, all sorts of lit up. So I guess this is plenty of lighting to show you guys as far as the wiring goes. You basically just follow the lines that are already existing, like this. You can just run them through. Keep them away from like sharp edges and everything else like that, just to keep it safe. And then since I have the underglow, I just ran the wire all the way along that. And then tidied everything up. There's no fender liner or anything in here anymore, so just followed the body panels, wired it through, and then with the front ones I did the same thing. I just connected it to the factory lines that are already here. just because those are meant to move with the suspension and everything else like that. So if I have it tight to those, it's not gonna have any tension on it when the suspension is moving up and down. And then all the wiring in here is all tucked away around the battery and everything. And the next thing that we're going to be doing is we have the Password JDM carbon pieces for the engine bay, and that'll pretty much cover up all the back side, and then this centerpiece, the entire intake manifold, will be covered with carbon. So then any wires that are exposed or anything else, all the wires that I've tucked away, will be completely hidden. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you're against lighting like this, if you hate it, if you absolutely love it, if you secretly love it. Your secret's safe with me. I know it's dope. Make sure to like the video, comment, subscribe. This car is nowhere near being finished. Project cars are never finished. But this project car is making leaps and bounds as far as everything with it. Aesthetically, we finally got a power adder, the supercharger, and this is only temporary. This is to just get us by until we can satisfy the real desire for more power. We'll see you guys in the next one.